Hey guys, good morning from Bali. Welcome to wherever you are in the world. I am at Hubud, which is a co-working space here in Ubud, Bali, with Steve, who is the co-founder of this lovely space.
Morning, everyone.
So Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I'm going to just forward this to another page on Facebook.
All right, well, my name is Steve. I'm Canadian. I grew up in Toronto, and I spent most of my adult life in Asia. So I left Canada when I was about 21. I worked for the UN for about 10 years. That was most of my career before I was 32, I think, when I had what I like to call my early onset midlife crisis, and decided that even though all the kind of pieces in my life lined up and had the kind of look and feel of success and happiness, I was happily married. I still am. I had 2 kids. I had a really great and interesting and exciting sounding career. And yet something was there, something was missing for me, and it took kind of a confluence of events to get my family and I to take the plunge of leaving what would be a very stable career, a life of travel, etc., and kind of embark on the unknown. But for me, it was that feeling that something was missing. So that's what brought us to Bali. That was about 9 years ago. So we've been here ever since, and we started Hubud about 5 years ago.
Awesome, thank you. That was great. And so now we're live on multiple places. So welcome from wherever you're watching. And the reason why I wanted to bring this conversation to you guys in particular is because I've known Steve for a couple of years. I've worked at Hubud, and we're friends. And we started having a conversation and catching up the other day. And I was like, this conversation is so rich and so juicy and delicious that I think that so many of you out there would want to know, have access to this conversation too, because I felt so inspired by it. And Steve has met people from all over the world, starting all different kinds of businesses over the years. And I thought that it would be wonderful. If you had any questions, definitely ask them while we're live. We want to answer them. But specifically, we're going to talk about, because a lot of you I know have businesses in your heart, or there's a dream that you have, or you want to travel the world and start a business, and it's really the lifestyle that attracts you into wanting to start a business. Or there's some sort of people or demographic or audience that you want to help. You've been through some sort of transformation. You're a light worker. And you want to help people transform through the pain that you've been through. So maybe you're a coach or some sort of other entrepreneur or healer, and you want to know how to get from that idea and that inspiration into actually making money and potentially even traveling the world. So cool.
Awesome. Let's do it.
And let us know where you're watching from. Definitely type in where you're watching from, and if you already have a business, type in what it is. If you have any questions, we're happy to have this be very interactive.
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things that we were talking about the other day was you've seen a lot of people struggle. So you've seen a lot of different business owners in various stages of business with different challenges and problems that come up, especially the people that you meet typically tend to be traveling the world while they do it, or at least on a break from their life, living here for a bit.
Yes.
And so could you speak to some of the most common struggles that you've seen, so that you guys know that you're not alone?
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of major ones, I'd say, that kind of keep coming up, and somebody once told me that their coach had said to them, the only thing standing in the way of your business being successful is you. And I've kind of seen that in my own life and as an entrepreneur, but also play out in the stories of literally hundreds of other people that I've had the opportunity to talk to. So I would say, the struggle is not necessarily skills-based, or it's not necessarily technical, right? So I'm trying to start this business, but I can't make my website work. Or I'm trying to start this business, but I'm missing these kind of pieces around, the financial side of things or the marketing side of things. I mean, that's all part of it, but I think for a lot of people, in some ways that's less of a problem because there's more obvious a solution. I would say the biggest challenge you have to overcome as an entrepreneur, especially if you're new to it, is the mindset, and it's a kind of self-doubts that'll run through your mind again and again. You think you kind of get something licked, and all of a sudden you wake up one morning, what am I doing here? And nobody's going to believe me. The imposter syndrome for sure is a big killer for a lot of people, right? That comes up a lot. And so I think that is number one, is basically kind of getting into the right mindset in the first place. Because for a lot of people, what living this life means, or even experimenting with it means, or dabbling in it, which we'll talk a little bit more about how people can do that, is it requires a leap of faith, right? And it often requires facing a whole bunch of external people doubting, not necessarily doubting you. They might think you're wonderful, but whenever you make a different decision in life that goes against the status quo, you're going to meet resistance from people that kind of either feel uncomfortable because you're doing that, what it reflects on them. I mean, ultimately, we're all pretty self-centered, self-absorbed people, right? And so, you make this decision and people are like, well, what does that mean about me? And, so then that kind of reflects back on you. And so it can be really hard, especially at the beginning, to have that confidence to say, okay, no, I'm going to do this. And then beyond that, when you actually starting the business, there's 100 different ways for that to kind of come back and get you where you think you got it, all of a sudden you're back in fear.
Yeah, totally agree with you. From even my own perspective of the people that I work with and I coach, the crab in the bucket mentality. So when one crab tries to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs bring him back down. Well-meaning, loving crabs,
right.
Meaning our friends and our family, because they're faced with quite often their desires for us to do well, but their own fear of not living up to their potential. And if we all just stay down here doing the normal thing, then it's safe.
Right.
And also mindset. I'd say that the majority of what I talk to my clients about is mindset. It is the big leap, and it's even getting through that initial thing of resistance of I'm going to do this, and then the crab's pulling you back down. And then how do I believe in myself when I'm met with an unreal amount of fear, doubt, overwhelm, and resistance that I've never even faced before in my life, with people around me not supporting me. And that's why I think some place like this, or even coaching, right, is wonderful, because you have that support and that community, and so you realize that you're not the only one doing this, you're not the only one who wants to live with this way. When I first came here 4 years ago to Hubud, I was like, oh my God, we're all doing, these are my people, we're all doing this, oh my God. And I was in this online business school thing, and I was like, I'm in Bali, and 3 other people said, I'm in Bali. We all stood up and we ran and hugged in the middle of Ubud.
Oh, amazing.
Because we were all here, and one of those women is she's actually in Canggu right now.
Okay.
So finding a like-minded community is really, really important, I think, on the journey. People who get what you're doing and support you and see and they don't necessarily have to see your vision. Sometimes it's hard to see people's visions before they become reality, right? But they honor that you have one and support you getting there.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that kind of finding your family thing, I know is an experience that we're able to kind of give to a lot of people here. And so what happens is people come here, and we've had members from 80 countries. We've had about 7,500 members in 5 years. And so it's a lot of different stories, a lot of different professional backgrounds, different ages, different stages, different things that they're thinking about when they first get off the plane. But a common thing that we get is, wow, I got here and people understood me for the first time. And so all these people that have been telling them, no, you're crazy, or it won't work, or have you thought about this, or what about the kids, or what about your pension, or blah, 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 blah. Then they get here and all of a sudden everybody's speaking their language, even if it's totally different business ideas. And I mean, this is one place in Bali. There are online places you can connect with others. So finding that tribe, it's a little bit of your family of origin versus the family you choose. And so I think there's something very powerful in making sure you're connecting to people that are not only telling you what you want to hear necessarily, like not blowing smoke up your ass, so to speak, but not necessarily being negative just because they don't understand and they're fearful.
Yeah, cool. What have you were on a roll before when you said mindset, and I think I jumped in and I said me too and shared my experience. So what else were you going to say about struggles that you've seen people have in their business?
Well, I think, so I guess getting onto the, partly in the personal, partly in the technical, if you're starting your own business, whether that's as a, we use the term infopreneur, so that's essentially trading on your knowledge, your expertise, or your perspective. So whether that's, through coaching, through being a social media specialist, doing online education stuff, I mean, literally, there are literally tons and tons and tons of people in that very broad field.
Like creating an online course and selling it?
Absolutely, yes. And it's like we all have something to share, and depending on then how you choose to do it and who you are and how you are able to give value to people, because people operate differently, right? Some people could never do what you do in terms of being that forward-facing kind of person, but they do other things amazingly well that you can't do. So that's part of it is knowing who you are and so yes, we all want to say ideally your work lines up with your values. This is the kind of perfect situation, right? So your work lines up with your values. Then how you work in your work lines up with your skill set, if you will, or your kind of natural personality type, etc. Because the more we can spend time in, people call it flow, and for me that's more of a, again, the passion piece, which I think is important, but it's not enough. If you're really struggling all the time because you're spending so much of your time and mental energy on stuff that you suck at, it's miserable, right? And so what we want to do is like, oh my God, well, I got to figure this out, and I got to do this by myself, and I got to do that by myself.
The website, and I gotta, yeah, it's the website. People always say I got to get my website. I'm like, my clients will say, but I need to get my website ready. And I'm like, how many of you, I asked them all, did you hire me because of my website? Did you even go to my website before you hired me?
Right.
And they all say, no, or maybe they have been to my website, but it's not my website that had them make the decision. Right. It honestly, what I think it was is personality. It's authenticity. It's
connection. It's connection.
It's and then do I think this person can get me where I want to go?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true, and there's
website.
always that it's always that thing for somebody, right? So it could be the website. For a lot of people, that kind of technical, what feels more technical is a bit overwhelming. For some people, it's not that at all. It's the act of putting themselves out there as an expert in anything, right? Because we really have this like, I'm afraid to call myself that. There's a lot of cultural barriers depending on where people are coming from in terms of being allowed to do that. But yeah, we all have a bit of that imposter syndrome, right? So I think that for some people is the stumbling block. So I would say the trap people fall into is thinking they need to do everything by themselves because they're a solopreneur, so they're not looking to hire a bunch of people, a bunch of different things. They want to keep it lean. They don't want to put in a ton of money to it, but you'll drown. Basically, is for most people the experience is you will drown if you're trying to do everything by yourself. Because the other thing is, you'll tend to focus on the thing that is the biggest struggle for you, right? So if it's the website, you're obsessing about the website, you're talking about the website, you're fiddling with the website, you're spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of doing this stuff that you're not really great at. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster in terms of wasting your time, taking you 3, 4, 5 times as long to actually launch the business. And also kind of reinforcing that negative story about yourself of like, no, I totally can't do this. I can't even get a bloody website up, right? So.
And in a way, I feel like that's even procrastination because that's what I've seen with people. It's if I spend all this time trying to, and maybe maybe you're a designer, maybe that's your business, and you actually create websites, and your challenge is being more upfront in front of camera and finding client marketing, right? So, but I'm talking about people who use their website as a procrastination tool, thinking that if I just get this done, then I'll be ready to go do the things that actually terrify me. And so instead of doing what scares me, I'm gonna fiddle around in the background where no one can see me, make videos and not really post them or whatever it is, but not actually come forth with my business, not actually have money as a goal, which is what a business is about, and in some ways impact and income. And instead I'm gonna do all these busy things, but not actually move forward in my business. And the reality is that's just hiding our fear, so we don't have to be uncomfortable to go to the next level. Sure. The resistance, it's procrastination. I've seen that. For sure.
If you make a list of things that you need to do, almost definitely by default, we will take the kind of easier, softer way. We'll take the one where we're like, okay, I'll do that, then I'll get into this thing, and that becomes tomorrow, that becomes the next day. So for sure, procrastination is a, you're right. I mean, it is obsessing over these things is a tool by which we procrastinate. So that's, I would say, a big challenge. I mean, for a lot of people getting into solo business, one of the big challenges is you don't have the same kind of external deadlines or external pressures that you would in an office setting, right? Where it's like, okay, I have to present at the staff meeting at Thursday this thing, and if I don't do it, I'm going to look bad, feel foolish, get in trouble, get a bad negative review, etc. When you're doing stuff by yourself, you have all the freedom in the world, and all the freedom to all the freedom to hang yourself with, basically, and not get it done, right? So setting up, some people are really self-motivated. They're super clear. They put the thing on the wall and they work towards it, and that's fantastic, and that's a skill set of theirs. For other people that are not like that, whether that's getting a coach, whether that's getting a accountability group together, whether that is looking for ways to set up those kind of timelines that you have to deliver something by, I think is really helpful.
And you could even find if money really is a limitation and you're spending money on your website, you can find an accountability partner in a Facebook community. Search in Facebook groups for a group of like-minded people, and then just say you're looking for an accountability partner and team up with somebody where you meet once a week on the phone or via text or something or via Facebook, and have your goals like heart to heart with somebody else.
Right.
Like
Yes.
there's ways, I think it's about thinking outside the box, right? It's about how can I, like Tony Robbins says, it's not about your resources, it's about being resourceful. So instead of limiting yourself, like I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z,
Right.
it's how can I do this?
Right.
Oh, I feel like I can't do it. Well, then how can I do it?
Right.
How can I, and then ask people, how can I do it? Post it on Facebook, how can I find an accountability partner? And see, like put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hive mind. Hive mind is great. For a lot of us, we struggle even with that because there's a feeling of, asking for help. I think is very difficult for a lot of people. And I would say if you can overcome that, you'll be ahead of most in terms of setting off on the journey.
Cool. So I'm gonna look and see if there's any questions. If you guys have any questions about starting a business or even starting a business where you travel the world, let us know. The other thing that we were going to get into today is looking at your life, even if you don't want to have the freedom and the responsibility and the lifestyle, all of it of being an entrepreneur, there's a lot there. If you wanted to set up, oh, by the way, one thing that I want to add is that most entrepreneurs I know, I've never heard this talked about really. I've talked about it with 2 people, but crying in the shower. Have you heard of this? Because of the emotional roller coaster of the entrepreneurial journey. There's days where you're making lots of money, making no money, having lots of impact, having no impact. You're putting something out, no one likes it. You think that you're on top of the world, and then you're on the bottom of the heap. And the swings that can come with being an entrepreneur of the highs and the lows. And I've heard that, I've heard from a couple of us that crying in the shower, taking a break and just like letting it out and then coming back. And so, do you want to speak to have you heard of any people and them describing the emotional journey of entrepreneurship?
The emotional journey is a tough one, for sure. It's a volatile one. And that's, yes, I think everybody who's in that realm certainly has experienced that. Things are going along, and then something creeps back in, or everything looks like it's gonna happen just like you planned it, and then something happens, and the whole thing falls apart, and you feel like, and you're really feeling like you're back to square one. And so that's a lot. Burnout is a real thing. And developing resilience is a real requirement. I think to doing that, and however it is that you find that, where your people are, where you get energy, where you recharge, how you recharge. Again, like if you're an introvert or an extrovert, certain things are going to recharge you. If you're, if you belong to different kinds of groups, if you like to exercise, but knowing that essentially, like with everything, if you're going down the entrepreneurial path, essentially you are responsible. Doesn't mean you have to do everything alone, but it means that only you are going to really know what you need and when you need it, and be able to self-advocate and ask for it is super critical.
Yeah, and it's almost like expect hiccups. Like when I was launching my first digital course, it was 3 years ago. I was launching it from Seminyak in Bali. Was that 3 or 2 years ago? And 3 years ago, and my laptop died. It was underneath the air conditioner, which spit out water when I wasn't there. I came back, my laptop was dead in the middle of my launch week, which was the busiest time of my business ever. So this laptop I have now, I got this in Singapore. I flew to Singapore the next day and bought a laptop. I didn't know here. I think I texted you even.
Okay.
I didn't know where to get one, and I was like, okay, well, I need a visa run anyways. I'm just going to go early, and I need to make it happen.
Right.
And that's it. I'm going to make it happen. Find a way. I got to make this happen. This is my dream, and no matter what, I am committed to my goal, which is I'm going to launch this baby. I've been working on it for months, and nothing's going to stop me.
Right.
Even flying to another country to buy a laptop, which is extreme. Right? It's Southeast Asia stuff, but finding a way. How can I make this work instead of,
Yeah. I think in some ways crisis often gives us it is nice because it kind of narrows the options, right? It narrows the field. So in that case, if you feel I'm committed to launching it, or it's really going to be a terrible thing if I don't, then you don't actually have a lot of options, right? You're going to find a way to get on a plane, you're going to find a way to get a laptop and launch. And I think that's actually a night. You don't want to be in that kind of state of panic all the time, but it is the nice thing about that, and kind of trying to understand of how we can kind of bring that practice of narrowing the field in our focus sometimes is also part of in my experience, part of the resilience, part of the managing the ups and downs of things. For me, one of the biggest struggles is the feeling that comes from indecision, right? So I'm left with a decision. What do I do? I want to launch this thing. What am I supposed to do? And letting that kind of rattle around in my head, where almost any decision is better than that. You know what I mean? Because then it's clear, you know what you're doing, and you're off.
Quick decisions.
Yeah, and knowing that you won't necessarily be 100% right every time, but it's better than kind of sitting in the mud.
Yeah. And we had talked about, or Steve had talked about, even if you're not an entrepreneur or you have no desire to be one, but looking at your life through an entrepreneurial lens, being the entrepreneur of your life, which is actually the title of this video. So will you warm us up, to open us up to the idea and explain what you were talking about how to look at your life as an entrepreneur?
Sure. Well, here's the deal. So 5 years into this, and literally meeting kind of thousands of people and going to conferences and events and reading lots of stuff, obviously in this area, a few things have kind of become clear to me. One is we do have this, a glorification of the entrepreneur, right? And there's this kind of image of it, and the wild maverick, making these big, bold decisions and winning the day, so to speak, right? My experience is, it's not for everybody, and that is really is certainly not a judgment, not a bad thing. I mean, altogether, my experience with all of here we are. Yeah. Okay. So what the experience has told me is people will be unhappy if they are not doing what they're meant to be doing, right? And doing it in a way that they're meant to be doing it. So that's kind of the idea and the passion connected to your ideals, but also the kind of who are you in your business and your life, right? And so if you're trying to be the website fixer and you suck at websites, or just that kind of work, you're going to be unhappy. You might struggle through it, but you're going to be unhappy. So my career advice for people is always like, how can you minimize the stuff in your life that you don't like doing, and how do you maximize the stuff that you do like doing? And it's kind of simplistic, but it's you never get to 100%, right? But and that's fine. But it's getting more self-awareness around that, and then orienting things in such a way that you can. So for some people, the idea of being an entrepreneur is nice. But it's absolutely 100% not necessary for this lifestyle. So I would say the trick to know is most of the people here are actually either are freelancers, which is kind of entrepreneurial in a lot of ways, or remote workers working for a company. What we see is that increasingly people are not getting these long-term jobs. Millennials, kind of 35 years in age and under. I used to be 35 one time, so I remember.
I did too.
I'm like a late bloomer millennial, or an early. Maybe I was early to the game.
Limited edition, the first,
right. That's right. It was awesome. But the deal is, generationally speaking, we're going to work we're going to work for way more places, and we're going to work for much shorter times per time, like kind of 2 to 3 years per job. So there's a real changing thing that's happening, and increasingly companies are not offering long-term jobs. What they want to do is hire freelancers. They want to hire people under contract as they need them, right? So the downside to that is the idea of having the safe option and sticking with this job forever is becoming less and less safe. It's going away. So it's not really a safe option. The upside is flexibility in contracts and things like that gives you flexibility around travel, around time off, around all of these things. And so the question is, how can you be entrepreneurial about constructing your life? And so you need to hustle a bit more. You're not going to go into the company and slowly work up the ranks for 40 years. You're going to do a bit of this, a bit of that.
My dad did that. He's at the same company for 43 years. Hi, Dad.
Right.
But it's not the way anymore. And my first job, I was there for 7 years.
Right.
In a marketing department, and then 3 years the next job. And you're right. It is the nature of work is moving.
Yeah, very much.
It has moved.
Correct. It's moved and is moving and both, and that is very unlikely to slow down. I think it's partly a generational preference, so people are looking for kind of new challenges and things like that. It's also just the rate at which technology is changing and globalization is happening, so things are just moving faster, right?
So then what is the safe way? If it used to be having the same job for 40 years with the pension and all that, what is the safe way now, this entrepreneurial vision? Committing
yourself to learning all the time. So that's the money shot right there. We look at Hubud as much as a classroom as an office. We had 440 events last year.
Wow.
It's all peer-to-peer stuff, because the thing is, if you're not consistently learning, if you just think about marketing, so you said marketing. So a friend of mine she's about 30 now, and we had this conversation two or 3 years ago, and she said, okay, she did her bachelor's degree in marketing, right? So she got a marketing degree. And 7 years later, she said, digital marketing was an elective. 7 years ago, right? Not like 57 years ago. So it's like, you know, if she kept going with what she had learned then, she's out of work.
Yeah.
Right? So there's really this need to continuously reinvent yourself, continuously pivot, continuously hustle, continuously improve yourself. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's the good news. So the idea of investing in a couple $100,000 degree at the beginning of your career, it's questionable. It really is. And I mean, I'm all for learning of all kinds, right? So if you want to go to university, I'm not certainly trying to dissuade people, but that's absolutely not enough anymore for most people. They got to keep learning all the way through. So yeah, I mean, the entrepreneurial side of things is about identifying opportunities. It's about seeing things that other people aren't seeing. It's about acting when other people aren't acting, and sometimes it's about making bold decisions, right? And so you can apply that absolutely to your life, where you're, I'm working in this thing, and now I see this other developments happening, and how is the rise of blockchain and crypto going to affect my industry? Well, I'm going to learn a bit more about that, so I can kind of bring that into what I'm doing. Or it's really being aware of what's happening and staying on top of things and learning and
and more and more I'm talking with people or attracting them into my world or having conversations where people are creating their side hustles, side hustles. So maybe they work for one employer and they have a contract there or something, but then they're also starting one, if not two things on the side, whether it's an actual clients coming in and paying money or writing a book or whatever it is, that there are multiple side hustles. So it's in one sense they're entrepreneurs, and in another sense they also have the stability. So it's the portfolio, as you said, of revenue streams. So looking at, and I love that Steve said this a couple of days ago, is like looking at your life, not just getting all your income from one place like my dad would, right? When he worked there for 43 years at his company. But having multiple streams. And I love what you said about the marketing. And I worked for 7 years. I worked in marketing for a company called The Sharper Image, which is not around, but I was really good at like newspaper ads and things that are like no longer a thing.
Right.
Like public relations, that people would send us products, like Tony Horton, who does P90, like he sent his first ad video to us. Like, it was a different way of doing things. None of that's, the principles, some of them are the same, but the way that we work is totally different.
And
I
the
love
skills you need are totally different.
Yeah, and constantly reinventing yourself, and like what is a emerging thing, a skill to have in a marketplace now, which public speaking, probably, because marketing is about speaking. It's about being comfortable sharing your truth. That's a really great thing to do. But looking at where's your income coming from this side hustle, this other stable job, and then this on the side. I love when you said that, to have a portfolio of revenue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's and again, this goes back to kind of who you are and where you're comfortable, right? So some people are very fine with the feast and famine idea, right? So I'm going to do this thing and hopefully build some stuff, make a bunch of money, and then it might fall apart, and then I'm earning nothing for the next while, and they're okay with that. It's a little bit like investing, right? Like, what's your risk tolerance? For other people, they're like, I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't sleep at night. And so, if they're then going into their own business, it would likely be some kind of phased approach, right? Where they're going to do it on the side, and they're going to slowly build it up until it gets to a point that gives them the confidence to say, okay, I'm going for this full time. Or for a lot of people, they end up with this kind of like, half-time approach where they've got an employer that's 20 hours a week kind of thing. And that kind of nails down the basics. They're making rent payments, they're fine, and then they're kind of doing maybe some freelancing or spending that time building your business or what have you on the side. But yeah, the idea of if you have a half-time contract, it probably means you have a contract, which probably means it can end, right? And so you're not guaranteed to have that for the next 20 or 30 years. So the idea of relying exclusively on that, the safe option, is where I mean it's not really that safe anymore, right? Because employers don't have the same that same kind of commitment, I think, that they used to, which was, if you're a loyal company man, we'll take care of you. 43 years, I'm sure you got a watch, I'm sure, like, my mother was with the school board for probably a similar length of time, 37 years. She was a teacher for most of that, then went into administration and other things, but I mean, it was a single employer relationship for her entire life.
Yeah, totally. It's different. I mean, I left Bali. I flew home for his retirement party. Right. Because it was like a thing. Of course. Like 43 years, the whole community's coming together. Yeah. No. And now it's like 2 years. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, and some people lament that. People are like, it's too bad that's changed, and maybe it is in some ways. I think, like with everything, there's good things and bad things. There's opportunities to it, and there's losses to it. But the truth is, it's happening, right? And so you can say I wish it wasn't, but it just is, right? So you kind of got to grab the bull by the horns, I think.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say is that because like I keep saying, I speak to a lot of people, trying to demand money from your passion at the start, at the gate, is not necessarily the best thing for creativity and for longevity and sustainability. And sometimes I think the having a side hustle where you're exploring your art, whether it is singing or whatever it is, if you're not quite demanding that it make money just yet, that you're finding your groove in it and you're putting yourself out there and you're getting exposure and you're finding your chops, I guess, so to speak. That's also a viable strategy, is not out the gate thinking that you're failing because your passion isn't generating you enough income to pay for everything, but to giving it space to breathe and letting it grow a bit, and that might be one of your things that you do. Right.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think the only caution with that is, and again, it all comes back to you. If you feel like you have a kind of a funny relationship with money, you know, where it's like, I feel badly charging this, or I don't want to do it because it's my passion, or or what have you. We all have weird scripts with money, right? Like finance and romance are the two areas that really mess with people's higher cognitive functioning, I think. And so money is a huge one to overcome for a lot of people, right? So if the only thing, absolutely developing it and working on it, and essentially looking at it as honing your craft, right? So if that's what you want to do, and you're going to take time to like experiment with it and get good at it, right? And learn and push and learn and push, fantastic, right? Because then you'll be better than other people at it, right? But make sure you have some form of accountability, internal or external, where you say, okay, I'm going to do this for a period of time. And then I'm going to get comfortable with moving into the, how do I charge for it?
Yeah, right? I love that. I do, yeah. There are a lot of people who feel that they can't charge for doing what they love, and it doesn't need to be that way.
Right. And then maybe it's not. I mean, here, again, maybe it's a hobby, right? And that's fine, right? Because here's the thing: if you do something and don't get paid for it, it's a hobby. You can think of it like that. It's not good, not bad, no judgment around it. But it's, if you're doing something and you're getting paid for it, that's a business. If you're getting paid enough for it to live and get to your financial goals, then that's a sustainable or financially successful business. If it's for some people, some people would argue and say, don't make your passion your business, because then you might lose the passion for it entirely, right? And that's also, I think, a valid concern. So I think, it really just comes down to being honest with yourself, and if you're going to make it your business, get good at it, but then get help if you need it, but get comfortable charging for it.
Yeah, and know when you need help. Know when you're struggling and it's enough is enough, and you need to get to the next level when you need help. And it's not. I've talked to a lot of men recently, and asking for help actually isn't weakness; it's strength. It's knowing when to get support is actually courage and strength, and it's wisdom. That's what I think. I've just had several conversations with men the past couple of weeks where asking for help, I was told by them, is a challenging thing, and I actually think it's strength, right? Knowing when to bring on support. One thing I wanted you to talk about, because Steve mentioned this to me too. He actually has this really wonderful thing coming up at towards the end of the year. Yep. A month long, where he does it in Bali. This is something that I wish I had when I was first starting out, because I did spin my wheels for a really long time on my email list, my website, my whatever it was, like all these pieces that sales, how to sell. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? In my business, and it actually completely held me back for more years than I care to admit, really. And so if you're just starting out, or you feel like you're struggling and you don't understand the full concept of the business, he has something that he's offering which is amazing, so please talk about it. I want them to know about it, but also talk about the components of it, so even if they don't want to come to Bali and participate in it, that they at least understand what you feel and what you've seen is important by the hundreds, thousands of entrepreneurs that you've chatted with over the years that you've had this space.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We've been looking, kind of sitting on this course for probably, honestly, 3 to 4 years. As in identifying it way back then that, okay, hey, there's this gap, let's say, but then really kind of letting it grow and mature over the last 3 years, let's say, in our thinking. So if people are going into this, right now we're just talking about it in the sphere of infopreneurship that I was mentioning. So, they've got this idea, they've got this perspective, they've got this gift, they've got this thing that they want to build the business around. And there's a number of components that go into kind of getting that business up and out in public, right? And essentially getting you your first client if it's a client-based business.
And so let me just jump in really quick. So
Yeah.
if you want to be an infopreneur, or you are one, that would be if you have some sort of skill set that you want to sell online, you want to make a digital course, you want to do a meditation album, you want to somehow sell what you know online and learn how to package that and get it out there into the world and make money from it.
Sure.
So
it
that's
could also be
infopreneur.
coaching. It could be people that are really amazing at social media that then kind of take on companies and run their social media accounts, influencer advertising, all that kind of stuff, right?
Okay,
Well, it's
cool.
not a product. It's not product based. Basically, it's knowledge based. So it's pretty broad, and it's obviously very transportable, very location independent friendly, right? Which is kind of part of the deal. So there's a number of things which people need. They need in varying degrees depending on what they're doing. They need a website, they need a social media presence, they need a personal kind of presence and brand, they need design and branding collateral and an identity. They need marketing help, and marketing is kind of strategy but also execution. You mentioned email marketing, email funnels, all the different tech tools, let's say, that go around with helping people manage these things are also overwhelming for people. Business finance planning and productization. So saying, I'm really good at this thing, so I want to be a coach. Well, there's actually like 50 different ways you can go about acting in a kind of coach-like way, whether that's one-on-one coaching, whether that's classes, whether that's masterminds, whether that's, there's a bunch of ways. How do you charge for it? How do you price it? How do you, et cetera? And then how do you sell it? I mean, how do you actually have the skills or soft skills when you're doing that first call to actually get people over the line?
And how do you take money? And how do you
And
there's so many
process.
things to figure out.
Yeah, there really are. And so the truth is most people don't ever really get out of the gate, or they really kind of, get along, but they get along not at the level that they're actually happy with or really kind of functional with. So, and that can take years, literally, months to years, depending on the person. So we came up with this idea called Launch 30, and the idea is not, learn how to launch your business in 30 days. It's come to Bali and launch your business in 30 days. So kind of 30 days till I'm taking customers. So how we're doing that is a combination of really three things. One is the accountability piece, and two is the time piece. And so essentially, by coming, people are doing that themselves. They're carving out that time where they're saying, okay, for the next 30 days, I will eat, breathe, sleep this. This is all I'm doing. And I'm not doing it in the context of my normal life where I've got other things and I'm commuting and I've got my kids or whatever it is that also takes up your time. I'm going to give myself tunnel vision and actually give yourself the time. Critical. It's really super critical. To do anything of depth, to do anything of meaning, you need to give yourself the proper time and space to do it. And this we've seen, really again and again.
Yeah.
The third side, which is really then the big side where we really come in, is to basically bring in all the resources that you need. So copywriting is an example. If you're a solopreneur, you need to be able to write copy. The better copy, the better. It's a simple equation. So part of it will not be we're going to do all of your copywriting for you, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring in an amazing copywriter who's going to teach you about copywriting, because no matter what you actually write during this month, you need to be able to take that on. You need to be able to do that the next month. You need to be able to update your ads. You need to be able to write great blog posts.
Yeah.
So we'll do, say, a 2-day session on how to do really effective copywriting, how to bring SEO elements into it as an example, how to do great blogging, et cetera, et cetera. And then over the course of this time, you will actually be writing the copy for your website, for your email marketing, etc., and then working with that copywriter to kind of go through it with a couple of checks to kind of get it live. We're going to build your website for you. So you're going to come, you're going to leave with a website. You're going to know how to maintain the website, or you're going to have contracted the company who's going to maintain it for you, right? So back to what I was saying about
Hire help.
right? And
Yeah,
so
One thing, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
I heard this brilliant thing many years ago from this woman. I don't remember her name right now, but she said, if you spend if you're an entrepreneur, if there's a dream in your heart, if you're not in your core expertise, if you're not working from your genius, if you're spending all your time on $20 an hour or $15 an hour jobs, you're never going to have the revenue goal. If you're never going to make revenue much higher than that, you need to hire out the people before you're ready so that you can actually go and do the things that you're best at and get paid at that level and express yourself and have the impact at that level,
Right.
and not be bogged down with So before you're ready, hire the people to do the other stuff.
For sure, and that in and of itself, kind of, you know, there are literally thousands or more than that people out there, for example, that can maintain your website for you. As an example, do you know who they are? Do you know how much you should pay them? Do you know what you're actually asking them to do? And for a lot of people, the answer to that is no, right? Or I want to hire a designer to come up with brand collateral. Well, do I even know what I'm asking them? Can I explain my brand identity to them, right?
Yeah.
So the idea with this is not that every single piece you'll ever need is done, but essentially, for example, we will produce your brand Bible, right? So what colors are you using? What things are you using that then when you hire it out later, you've essentially got something to say, this is what I need, here's the thing, right? So the idea is, you know, with the big components, you know, which is the website, all the social media channels kind of lined up, a pricing and marketing strategy, and all of the kind of tech tools and stuff put in place and lined up to run that. That's the goal by the end of the 30 days, that you are absolutely client ready. And you know, depending on the person and kind of how hard they hustle, you know, they could be kind of out there trying to get that before they actually leave.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Is really like, you know, we're keeping it narrow. We're keeping it selective in the sense of, you know, we have a couple of requirements from people we need. They just basically, they have to really want it. They really want to do it. Because for us, it's like, we don't want to get people to make that investment, come here, and then not be able to help or do something.
Yeah,
it's not something we're willing to kind of get into. And so we want the group to be cohesive, tight, super motivated. Because, you know, what do they say? You're the average of your 5 closest people, right?
Totally. And be around the like-minded peeps who are go-getters.
Mm-hmm.
How can they find out more about that?
The website, hubud.org. So
Okay.
www.hubud.org is our website. And there's something on there about Launch 30, or pop your email in anywhere there, and we'll eventually kind of find you and tell you about it. But it's running in September and November. We're going to run 2 intakes at the end of this year. Yeah.
Cool. So, and I wanted him to share that with you. I love giving you guys value, and if I could go back to when I started my business 6 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
or at any point back then, this would have been a huge time saver and money saver to have that understanding in the beginning. I tried to do everything for a really long time, and it was a bit of a struggle.
Right.
And so, so maybe this isn't something that resonates with you. That's no problem. But he just said a lot of really cool parts of business. So if you have that infopreneur spirit, and you want to make money through what you know, what your knowledge, look at the aspects, watch the replay, and look at what he talked about. Those are all things that you're going to want to know. And if you feel inspired or feel the call to come to Bali and sit in the Launch 30 program, definitely reach out to Steve. I think it sounds like an amazing thing. I want to see if you guys have any questions about looking at your life through an entrepreneurial lens, or starting your business, or selling information online, or anything that you have. Definitely type it in the comments, and also let us know where you're watching from. That's kind of fun. We have a little bit of time left if you have anything for us. And while they're thinking of their questions, is there anything else you wanted to add about what you've seen, wins, struggles from the people that you've talked to over the years, or your own experience?
I think the main thing is find a community. So if you're out there and you're thinking about this, if it's a kind of little dream in the heart, so to speak, at this point, if it's something you're almost kind of a little reluctant to talk about to your circle of peers or friends or family because it just feels like it's weird or that they don't understand, there's tons and tons and tons of people that do. So find them, you know, and they're out there. They're online. They're in chat groups. They're out there, right? So this you know, lifestyle, let's say, is more and more people are engaging with it. More and more people are kind of making it easier in some ways to then have those conversations with friends and family. But yeah, find your people.
Cool. So find your people, find your tribe. Be really work on your mindset, is what you said in the beginning.
Yeah.
And
be clear about who you are. So don't tell yourself a story about who you should be. The whole point, I mean, I think, like, you know, laptops on the beach, fantastic. It gets old quickly. Like
and hot.
It gets hot. Exactly. Who wants hot?
Who wants a hot laptop on their lap at the beach?
You know,
it's a great Instagram photo.
Yes, it's a great Instagram photo, which is honestly why most people do it. And then after a while, they're like, oh yeah, there's more to this. So for me, the value is very clear. It's about freedom. It's about choice. It's about spending as many hours that we have on this earth as possible doing stuff that we don't regret doing. You know what I mean? And don't resent doing. So, you know, don't say I'm going to leave this and then I have to go and I have to do it this way because that's the way, or that's a sexier sounding way, or whatever. The closer you can be to honoring you, your skill set, and your way of working, the better you'll be. I mean, one quick story. A friend of mine, he ran a business. He still runs a very successful business, running marketing campaigns like Google AdWords campaigns in Australia. It's maybe the biggest in Australia. And he said when he made the switch from kind of fancying himself to be a Richard Branson, fly-by-night, maverick, ideas-y, wild entrepreneur, to being what he called the humble mechanic in his business, because what he was really good at was data and seeing trends and setting things up really properly and systematizing things. So once he shifted his own work to that side of the business, that's when his business took off, right? And he hired out some of the other, maybe the forward sales or whatever parts that he felt he should do himself as an entrepreneur. You know, once he stopped kind of living in that story and started doing what he was good at, that's when everything clicked. And he also felt a lot more satisfied and, you know, a lot more aligned, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah, and that's exactly it for me. It's aligning with your soul and your soul and your personality, aligning the energy that's inside of you, what lights you up, what you love, what you truly love, what really brings your energy alive, with your talents and your personality.
Right.
So what you like, and being yourself, being 100% you, and being honest with yourself, telling yourself the truth about who you actually are, which is what I heard you say, and what you actually like doing, and then also how people enjoy you, right? So if you're going to be client facing, like what's the impact you want to have, and like where do you shine?
Shine on.
Any final thoughts here?
No, come to Bali. It's a beautiful place. There are lots of beautiful places. And so, you know, find somewhere that inspires you. If you can, and if you can create, if you're kind of at that early stage where you're kind of trying to vision things out, whether that's business-wise or life-wise, if you can give yourself the gift of a break, and actually kind of pull yourself out of your day-to-day life for a period of time, even if that's just a few weeks or something, really do that to give your step off the treadmill a little bit and give yourself the opportunity to dream, right?
Yeah, go, and you know what? If you can't step too far off the treadmill, then go into nature. Take a walk in nature by yourself without your phone, and just look at the trees, look at the water, whatever is in there, and take some time with your soul, basically, and what's important to you.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say, and I just spaced on it for a minute. Oh, it's that quote: whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And it all comes down to your mindset. If you think that you can create a business from your heart, from your spirit, from your mind, and align it all and go out and create something, then you'll start taking action in that direction. If you think that you can't, then you won't. So open up your mind, whether it's through reading books, through the nature, through like-minded people. Open up your mind to what is possible and look at the questions you're asking yourself. So instead of thinking, I could never do this, the question is, how can I do it? Or this is not possible, how could it be possible? So instead of, I can't, right? Can't's the victim. How could I? Reframe everything with how could I, and let your mind open up to the possibilities. That's how it all starts. We got to think it first.
It's true.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
Woo-hoo. Bye, guys. And if any questions you leave, if you're watching this in the replay, we'll try to get in there and answer them, or I will. And so have a beautiful, beautiful day. And whatever you dream, you can achieve. Bye, guys.
Bye.